Hello and welcome to Math Lessons with Linda. Today's topic is how to solve a quadratic equation. The first thing we're going to review is a basic property of any equation. I'm going to write two factors, a times b, and set them equal to 0. What I know to be true is that if the product of two factors is equal to 0, that tells me that either a has to be equal to 0 or b must be equal to 0. That's the only way I can multiply and get a product that equals to 0. So keeping that in mind, let's look at our first equation. X squared minus 3x minus 18 is equal to 0. What makes an equation a quadratic is when the degree of the equation is 2. So once I notice that, the first thing I'm going to think is, am I able to factor this quadratic? We've already talked about factoring in a previous lesson. You may want to review that before you watch the rest of this video. The first thing I'm going to make sure is that my equation is already equal to 0, because that's what my product property up here was telling me to do. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor this quadratic. So I need factors that multiply to negative 18 and add up to negative 3. So I can list out the factors of 18, 1 times 18, 2 times 9, and 3 times 6. And I think I'm going to choose 3 and 6 because if I subtract 6 minus 3, I'm going to get 3. And now I just have to worry about my signs. And since I need a negative for my middle term, that means I need to make my bigger factor the negative, so I have some negatives left over. So now what I'm going to do is I factor my x squared. I put an x and an x in each parenthesis. I put in my minus 6 from here and my plus 3 from here. So I already know that negative 6 plus 3 gives me negative 3. I want to make sure that negative 6 times positive 3 gives me negative 18, which it does. Now that I have factored, I'm going to refer back to my a times b equals 0. In this case, the x minus 6, that's one of my factors. I'm going to call that a. The x plus 3, that's my other factor. I'm going to call that b. So in order for this to be true, x minus 6 has to be equal to 0, or my x plus 3 factor could be the one equal to 0. So I set them each equal to 0. I have two little miniature equations that I want to solve. I'm going to add 6 over here. So one of my solutions is that x could be a positive 6. I'm going to subtract 3 on my other one. So my other solution could be x equals negative 3. Something else to remember about quadratics: since the degree is 2, what that tells you is you should get 2 solutions to your equation. I did get 2 solutions, and I can go back and substitute in the 6 and the negative 3 into my original equation if I want to check it, or if you're required to check it in class, just to make sure that my solution is correct. And that is how I solve a quadratic equation using factoring.